Today on Commander Replay, Zetalpa is not the mama. Something, something, something. Find out next on Commander Replay. Hello everyone, welcome back to Dinosaur Week, playing Zetalpa Primal Dawn today. Let's take a look at our opening hand. Oh, this one's weird. We have a whole bunch of colorless lands, a terrain generator, a tithe, and an oath of lieges. That feels just a little bit too awkward for me. Well, yeah, that feels just a little bit too awkward for me. Okay, this hand still a little bit questionable. It is a two-lander. We will keep. We're going to be on the hope we draw into more lands plan, which is never really a good idea. If you guys watch the most recent Command Zone podcast of 10 mistakes Commander players make, keeping crappy hands is a mistake that Commander players make often, and hopefully it doesn't come back to bite us right here. Oh my god, there's an Ancient Tomb. That is such a good thing. Chances of being wheeled are very, very low, so we'll play the plains first. That Ancient Tomb is going to be huge. Because now instead of having to draw two lands, that Ancient Tomb gets us to 4 mana, which can get our Thran Dynamo down, and at that point I think we'll be talking about a pretty quick Zetalpa coming in. Ovia, Parishi Sage Lifecrafter coming into play. So when I was building this deck, I was trying to avoid just playing a white equipment deck. It just didn't seem that exciting to me, but as I started going through it, I couldn't really figure out what else to do with Zetalpa. It's basically just a really big creature that's hard to kill. It's going to be a great beat stick and a great blocker. And I just found it really difficult to kind of build around that concept other than going Voltron. So originally I was going to do something with a bunch of janky tap artifacts like Oracle's Vault and some of the new flip stuff. I decided not to do that just because I would need to do some play testing with that just to make sure that that deck type would even work or be fun or entertaining to watch or anything like that. I wasn't sure about playing something that I didn't really know anything about. So what I did instead is I built the standard white equipment Voltron deck, except our goal today is going to be to try to assemble Cauldra, which will be very exciting. As far as this turn is concerned, well, we could play the Ancient Tomb and go Sword of Feast and Famine. The question I have is, if we just play this Luminarch Ascension, do we just get killed? Rafik the Many will probably come down next turn, and I foresee it being a while before we really have blockers. So I think we hold off on the Luminarch Ascension until we know we can block. In the meantime, I'm going to drop down the Ancient Tomb, pay the life, and drop in a Sword of Feast and Famine. Luminarch Ascension has a funny way of just getting you killed. People are like, oh crap, that thing just spits out angels. Let's kill him as fast as possible. That's definitely happened to me a few times in the past, so I don't feel like running this thing out there on turn 2, given the current board situation, is going to be a great idea, especially since we know Rafik can come down next turn, and the deck is probably looking to cast Rafik on the next turn, in addition to Ovia being in play, that's also going to be able to attack us and make things miserable for us. So let's take a look at Zetalpa Primal Dawn. It is 6 white for a 4/8 with flying, double strike, vigilance, trample, and indestructible. People have called this thing keyword soup. Someone else made the meme, 1-800 are you flapping? Yeah, so a lot of really good creature combat abilities on Zetalpa, which is ultimately why I think I came back to the Voltron style of deck, because when you have all those type of abilities, it just makes sense that you want to equip it up, especially the indestructible. It makes it hard for people to kill your commander. There's so many less ways to interact with indestructible creatures. So you can throw your equipments on there pretty safely, or at least much safer than a creature that does not have indestructible. So that's where we ended up. Zetalpa is sort of like a new take on Akroma, Angel of Wrath, which was one of my favorite cards when I was a kid a long time ago. I used to play a Reanimator deck that would basically just dump Akroma into the graveyard and then pull it out, Resurrection or Breath of Life, and that was all kinds of fun. That was in Casual Extended like 10 or 12 years ago. Hainware Militia Captain coming into play. Opponent plays an Eldrami's Call, by the way. Let's find out what they went for. So they tutored up the Hainware Militia Captain with the Eldrami's Call. And it comes in tapped. The Rafik opponent played a Blind Obedience on their last turn, which will make blocking really difficult. Also, it's going to make this Thran Dynamo pretty bad, but we have nothing else going on, so Thran Dynamo it is. Wow. We can cast Zetalpa next turn. Unfortunately, it'll come in tapped, unless someone deals with the Blind Obedience. But still, turn 4 Zetalpa is pretty good. Anyway, let's take a look at what our opponents are actually playing. First up, we have Ovia Pashiri, Sage Lifecrafter. Is 1 green for a 1/2. Pay 3, tap it, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact token. Pay 5 and tap it, create an XX colorless construct artifact token where X is the number of creatures you control. Pretty interesting, sort of like a new take on Reese the Redeemed, except with servo tokens and the big ability, instead of making more 1/1 tokens, you make one really big token. Kind of interesting. Raging Raptor is coming down for our opponent. Whenever it's dealt damage, you may search your library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield tapped. Seems good to me. And that's Rest in Peace. Rest in Peace is not great for what we're trying to do. We have the Samaria Shepherd in hand, so anything that goes to the graveyard, we can get out pretty easily. That plan's going to be offline until someone deals with Rest in Peace, because all the graveyards are getting exiled, and anything that would go to the graveyard will now be exiled. One easy way to deal with that will be to play our Zetalpa, and then just kill the Rafik opponent very quickly. Whenever you don't want to deal with something on board, just kill that player, and you won't have to deal with it anymore. So our second opponent, Rafik the Many, is 1 green, white, blue for a 3/3 with Exalted. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, it gains double strike until end of turn. Rafik almost always an Equipment Voltron style deck, or they're going to put some nasty stuff on Rafik, and Rafik's going to attack in and kill you in 1 or 2 swings. But a lot of other things in the format became more powerful. Rafik is not a weak commander by any stretch, just that power creep kicked in the rest of the format, and everything around it got much more powerful. So back to our turn, we draw Sunscorch Regent. Well, since we're playing Zetalpa, as much as I want to jam the Sunscorch Regent right now, we're just going to cast our Zetalpa. 8 mana, paying 2 life off the Ancient Tomb, and Zetalpa coming into play. Unfortunately, it'll be tapped. By the way, Voice of Resurgence came down for the Tristani opponent last turn. Finishing up on our opponents, our last opponent is Tristani Selesnia's Voice, is green, green, white, white for a 2/5. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may gain life equal to that creature's toughness, pay 3, and populate, make a copy of a token creature you control. Tristani almost always a token deck that's going to gain a lot of life, so they're going to go wide, they'll probably make some big tokens in there, and they'll gain a lot of life in the process. It can be a really difficult commander to kill because they can gain so much life. Luckily for us, we're playing a commander where killing them with commander damage is a reasonable thing to do. If you're playing a commander, let's say like Ovia, like our opponent is, killing the opponent with commander damage is probably not very likely. And that can be tough if your opponent goes up to like 80 or 100 life. It's really difficult to pump out that much damage, especially before they have a chance to react to it and do whatever they're trying to do. Pterosaurs weren't dinosaurs. Pterosaurs were cousins of the dinosaurs that evolved from a land-dwelling reptile. They were the first animals after insects to evolve powered flight and the largest creatures ever to fly. Cartouche of Strength coming into play. Enters the battlefield, you may have enchanted creature, fight target creature you control. Interesting. Hainware Militia Captain's going to go down, and that's probably a good thing. That thing gets pretty nasty when it flips over. Why didn't the Hainware Militia Captain die? Did they not fight? Whenever Cartouche of Strength enters the battlefield, you may have enchanted creature, fight target creature an opponent controls. Did they choose no? They chose not to use the ability. Weird. Stuffy Doll coming into play. Well, I don't like where this is going. I bet they choose us. The Tristani opponent wouldn't be a bad choice either, since we know their life total is going to get pretty high. Yeah, they choose us. That's an increasing devotion for the Tristani opponent. Yeah, next turn, that Hainware Militia Captain's probably going to flip over, unless someone wipes the board between now and then. The tokens will make playing Nahiri not such a great idea. So the Rest in Peace puts increasing devotion into the exile zone for our opponent, so we won't have to worry about them casting the second half of that increasing devotion, which is pretty good. What to do this turn? I don't really want to run Nahiri out there because of all the tokens. Without the tokens, it'd be fine, but with it, I'm a bit worried. So I guess the problem becomes anytime anyone attacks the Rafik opponent, we're just going to die, which I don't love. So I think we have to kill the Rafik. We can kill the Rafik and then use the Sunscorch Regent to try to gain as much life as we can back. I think that's the plan that I'm liking right here. So let's get Zetalpa equipped up. Question is, do we use the Ancient Tomb? I'm thinking no. I think we want to preserve our life total just a little bit. We should get a sword trigger off of the Feast and Famine. So send Zetalpa into the Rafik opponent. So hit number 1 lands on tap, and hit number 2 lands on tap again, and opponent has discarded their last card. It was Authority of the Consuls. Well, I guess the Authority would have been pretty good with all the tokens that Tristani's probably going to make. So I'm going to cast the Luminarch Ascension. I think because of the tokens, I'm going to go with the assumption that there's no way that we make it back to our turn with 4 counters on the Luminarch Ascension. So I'm going to move the Feast and Famine over to the Sunscorch Regent. I want to protect that Sunscorch Regent as much as possible because it's going to gain us a lot of life. Thallid Germinator coming in for our opponent, and we get a Sunscorch trigger. Sunscorch getting bigger. So 1 counter on Luminarch Ascension. We're getting there. Nice. Land for the Rafik opponent. So Rafik is probably dead. All they can do is cast their commander this turn. And I have every plan to finish them off on our next turn. Rafik coming in. They're going to get an Extort trigger and trigger for Sunscorched Regent. So everyone gets drained a little bit by the Extort trigger. We go down to 34. Hayward Militia Captain's going to flip over. Yeah, it's a 7/7. That's pretty big. Reese the Redeemed coming into play. Oh boy. Opponent is going to be able to make some tokens. A board wipe would not be the worst thing. And Tristani Selesnia's Voice coming into play. The Westvale Cult Leader is now a 9/9. Opponent decides to send 2 tokens into us to... That makes sense, to keep the Luminarch Ascension from getting another counter on it. Westvale Cult Leader gonna make another token at the end of their turn. And opponent's gonna gain a little bit of life out of that. We draw Temple of the False God. Not super helpful. Not what I was looking for right there. Let's move the sword back to Zetalpa. I guess the question now is, do we even bother with the Rafik? I think as much as I really want to kill the Rafik, I don't think it makes sense. Because of how ramped up that Tristani's going to get, I think we need to go after the Tristani right now. I'm going to leave Sunscorched Regent back as a blocker. Right now, the most relevant thing is us doing commander damage. So Zetalpa gonna hit the Tristani opponent. This is also good because it'll make him discard 2 cards, and those will be going into exile. We get a Desolator Twin. Yeah, that's a good hit. And a Karamitra, also a good hit. I will take both of those. Although, it makes me wonder if they're discarding those 2 things, what else they have in their hand. Savage Thallid for the Ovia opponent. Looks like opponent's on the Thallid plan. Going all the way back to Fallen Empires. Not this card specifically, but Thalids in general. Another trigger for the Sunscorched Regent. Keep ticking up our life. So we get another counter on Luminarch Ascension. That's good news. If for some reason we can get Luminarch Ascension powered up by our next turn, then we can make a lot of angels with the sword trigger. Nice. So the Rafik draws another land, so another dead draw for them. That's good news for us. And we get another counter on the Luminarch Ascension. I have a feeling that the Rafik will probably use the Stuffy Doll at some point before our next turn, so we may not be active just yet on the Luminarch Ascension. 3 counters on Luminarch Ascension.
Quetzalcoatlus is the largest animal ever to fly. It had a wingspan of up to 33 feet and is just absolutely massive. Here's a few pictures from the Austin Museum of Science.
Well, Reese gonna make a token. Tristani triggers. So opponent sending in 3 tokens, just to keep us from getting that 4th counter on Luminarch Ascension. That's the correct play on their part. We will eat some of their tokens. Opponent gets to make another token at their end step, and Tristani will trigger one more time. Oh man, this is tough. So Tristani left 3 open mana. It could be a lot of things. We just found a Steel Shaper's Gift, and I mean, I really want to go for Cauldra, but the safest thing is probably a Swiftfoot Boots. Let's start by playing our planes. We'll play the Steel Shaper's Gift. I know what we're gonna go for. We're gonna get Pariah Shield. Or we could go for Mask of... Oh, man. Such a tough choice here. There's a lot of good cards we could get. Fire and Ice, obviously pretty good. That would draw us 2 cards. Mask of Memory would draw us 2 cards, but also filter us 4. Pariah Shield would make it so opponents can't do damage to us, and that's pretty sweet. Or there's Swiftfoot Boots, just so we can protect our Zetalpa. I actually think Mask of Memory is the correct choice. I think the way that we lose right now is just by drawing lands the rest of the game. If we keep our hand full of action, we're in very good shape. We have a lot of mana available to us. So if we just draw more cards, we should be in really good shape to win the game. So equip up the mask onto Zetalpa. Send Zetalpa into the Tristani and hope for the best. Oh, there it is. It's a Path to Exile. Yeah, I thought that might be a problem. At least we'll get a land out of it. We do get a Sunscorched trigger. So we'll use Path to Exile's ability. Get a land. The combat fizzles. We have 8 mana available to us. Not enough to recast Zetalpa. I think we run out the Emeria Shepherd since we need blockers. Oh, right. Oh, that's tough. Blind Obedience makes him come in tapped, so that's not great. With our last mana, put the Mask of Memory on the Sunscorched Regent. Opponent's going to put some Spore counters on things. So last turn, I'm thinking it may have been better to attack the Rafik opponent. I'm not sure if opponent would have burnt their Path to Exile on that. But that would have got us the card draw of Mask of Memory, which would have been really good. Carrion Call. Create 2 insect tokens with Infect. Ugh. We get a Sunscorched trigger. Nice. Opponent doesn't attack, so we should be getting our... actually, yeah, nice. So we get our 4th counter on Luminarch Ascension. That's a privileged position. Opponent not real happy that the other 2 opponents let us get the 4th counter on Luminarch Ascension. Oh, so Reese the Redeemed is making a whole bunch of tokens. The game's going to get interesting now. Tristani's going to gain a lot of life, and also have a lot of power on board. If nothing else, we'll be able to make a crap ton of 4/4 angels, so we should be able to blunt some of that damage that comes in, but we won't have nearly as many tokens as our opponent does. And they could come in with that Westvale Cult Leader right now if they wanted to. Yeah, it looks like that's what they're going to do. A Voice of Resurgence is coming in. When this thing, let's see. When an opponent casts a spell during your turn or when it dies, create a white elemental creature that's power and toughness equal to the number of creatures you control. I think we'll just take the 2 damage on that one. So opponent going to get us for 16. That's no small amount. That's a tithe. Meh. I suppose we play it just to find the land. Play the tithe. Oh, we have a problem. Our creatures are going to come into play tapped. Mistveil. We could get a Mistveil Plains. No real reason to get a Mistveil Plains right now. Drop the Plains into play. So I think the plan right now is put the sword on the Emeria Shepherd, attack the Tristani opponent. Oh, we need to equip the Sword of Mask of Memory. Oh, God. Crap. That's going to cost us really big. We probably lose the game because of that. With the sword trigger on the stack, we make a bunch of angels. We need to preserve our life total, so we're not going to use the Ancient Tomb right here. Oh, that was such a big punt. We're just going to have to keep hoping. Hope our opponents do something about some of the tokens. But I don't suspect that they'll be very likely to help us out too much either. If we can get back to our next turn somehow, then we can do some really good things, because we'll have a lot of angels if we do. Our opponent's last card was a True Conviction, so it's a good thing we got that out of their hand. That would definitely end the game. Ravenous Daggertooth coming into play. Whenever it's dealt damage, you gain 2 life. We get a Sunscorch trigger. Back up to 20. Another counter on the Luminarch Ascension. It's not that it's going to matter too much. That's a Blighted Agent for our opponent. Infect and can't be blocked. We get 2 triggers. We get a Sunscorch trigger, and opponent's got a Blind Obedience trigger, which will probably negate the Sunscorch. Wow, the Rafik opponent's back to 40 after we dinged him for 12 with our commander. A lot of life gain this game. Reese making a bunch more tokens. Tristani triggers a whole bunch of times. The Westvale Cult Leader is a 26/26. We're basically just hoping on a misplay from our opponent. Opponent says do or die, I guess, since the other 2 won't play, and just wait till we get slaughtered. Yep. Oh my god. The opponent's sending the Westvale Cult Leader into us instead of at the Stuffy Doll. Oh my god, that's awesome. I think we might survive. Our life total will be really low, which will be problematic, but... So we're going to have to give up our Sunscorch Regent and throw it in front of the Westvale Cult Leader. But we should survive the rest of this hit, unless our opponent has something wacky. We're down to 7. Nice, we're still alive. That is awesome. Okay, so now we go crazy with Luminarch Ascension. I'm not going to use the Ancient Tomb, still trying to preserve our life total a bit. We have 32 damage worth of tokens, but if we send all of them in, that means that we cannot have blockers. There's a Sword of Fire and Ice. 38 damage. I think we kill Rafik, because then our lands will untap, and then we can make more blockers. But if we do that, then we die to the tokens. Alright, I guess we're on the Hope and Pray plan. Let's see. Oh, Rafik scoops it up! Nice! That's going to help. So cast the sword. Oh, that's going to help immensely. So now our tokens will come in untapped, and that means we can block all day. Opponent says good game. Nice! So he scoops it up. Bam, there it is. Oh, yeah. We're going to get there on basically just on being lucky. Make some more angels and go to combat. Make sure we've got enough damage. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's 24. 28 plus 8 is Exaxes. A fog would be an absolute blowout right here. Nice. So let's see what our next couple cards were. Thought Vessel, Land Tax. Okay, so that one hit that we missed with the Mask of Memory did not come back to bite us, which was incredible. If our opponent sends the Westvale Cult Leader into the Rafik opponent, then Rafik opponent blocks a Stuffy Doll and we just die on the spot. But wow, I can't believe we won that one. That was close. And there's one thing to think about, is that when your commander costs 8 mana, if someone plays a Path to Exile or a Swords to Plowshares, they spent 1 mana against your 8 mana, and you are just so far behind. You've lost so much tempo. Because of the Blind Obedience, we couldn't really recast our Zetalpa at any point because it was going to come in tapped. Having a big creature come in tapped is not great when your opponents have tons and tons of tokens, so we got really lucky in that game. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, feel free to comment, like, or subscribe. Thank you for watching.